Hello, everyone. I thought I would pop on and talk a little bit about something we've spoken about before in the past. I mean, I think it would have been one of our first messes where we spoke about what I call Festen Facts. I don't know if anyone remembers the film Festen, but if you don't, or if you haven't seen it, I really recommend you queue it up and get it watched. It was part of the Dogma movies, which were a bunch of movies that Lars von Trier, I think, organized a group of rules that would be followed in the making of them. That it would all be natural light, there would be no gunshots or murders, and it would tell it would use these strictures to create a new kind of cinema, and it succeeded. The Dogma films look like nothing else; they're amazing. But Festen is the best. Festen is the best of that lot, I think, in my view. And what Festen is about, it's about this celebration of a patriarch in this family. And during this celebration, the oldest son stands up to deliver a speech. And he reveals during the speech that his father used to abuse him and his sister. And where the genius of Festen comes in is that at first it has no effect. The celebration has its own momentum. And this son, even with this most shocking revelation, he cannot slow the momentum. And the celebration goes on and everyone ignores him. So he tries again, he stands up and he makes a speech again. And various things happen, like his brothers try and stop him. He's tied to a tree outside the house, so he can't speak. And the celebration just goes on and on and on. And once again, I'm reminded of that of Festen by the recent revelations that have come about because of Breslow, the Mermaids trustee. Extraordinarily, yesterday, there were a bunch of blue ticks defending mermaids. Owen Jones was among them. So were a lot of Americans, which is slightly more forgivable because Americans are they've swallowed the Kool-Aid completely, but also their knowledge of what's going on in the UK is much more limited. And of course, The Guardian, as usual, aren't publicizing these stories. And all the lefties on Twitter are reading The Guardian anyway in America. It's part of the reason why they are so carefully ignoring this issue. They don't want to disturb their American audience. But we have an extraordinary story here. Breslow wasn't just a pedophile apologist. He wasn't just arguing for more kind of understanding of the pedophile. He's a pedophile. Breslow is a pedophile. He admits to it over and over again. And yet, just like Festen, these people like Owen Jones, they keep coming, and they keep saying the same things. Now, there's a few other things I just want people to bear in mind, because as I say, there's a lot of stuff. Hey, cool cat. You asked me to say hello, so I say hello. Let me read out. Sorry, let me just skip ahead and read out something written by our friend Breslow. It's really fascinating. Can't get up Yoink for some reason. Where's Yoink? Yoink is very good, by the way. If you have a Mac, Yoink it takes all your files and you can drag them to a little compartment that's just on the screen at all times. It's persistent, whatever screen you're on, so you can easily move files around, which is sometimes a problem with Macs. So this is one thing he wrote. Let's have a listen to this. I'm not sure where this comes from, but it's he's basically a one-man WikiLeaks in that all this stuff has been admitted and said out loud in studies that he's written that are publicly available. That's the brilliant thing about this fight. Everything's in plain view. I've often talked about Susie Green's bizarre TED Talk where she basically admits that she transitioned her kid because of homophobia. you know. But anyway, here's the thing that Breslow wrote. I find that I'm constantly struggling, not because of my homosexuality or because my gayness is so repressed, but because of my sexuality as deviant. What does it mean to be queer in a way that is so rejected that I am persecuted and ridiculed, even within my own, quote, community? Well, pedophiles do tend to get a rough time, and gay rights have suffered from association with pedophiles for a number of years and have been doing their very best to bury that view of gay people. But of course, someone like Breslow is fighting to own a bit of the space in the LGBT, despite the fact that what he does and what he's interested in is abhorrent. He goes on to say, the work that I do within the LGBTQ community seems so useless when it simply attempts to legitimate normative homosexuality within a heterosexual appropriate sexuality formation. What's he saying there? For me, it isn't the gender of my sexual object choice that is the sole basis of my desire, but the age and subsequent deviance of that desire that is important. Marriage, healthcare, domestic benefits mean so little when looking for a way to express a completely silenced and ridiculed society. He keeps saying ridiculed. Pedophilia isn't ridiculed. Pedophilia is, we chase pedophiles out of town. We tar and feather them. We keep them away from children. We certainly don't make them trustees of children's charities, which Mermaids did. And that's the other thing that we must keep saying to these defenders of Mermaids. They hid his name. They hid his name. Why? Why did they hide his name? Once again, we can thank Jolie and Mom, the anti-Midas touch, for launching the action against the LGBT Alliance, which was the only reason we found all this out. It was in the evidence, you know. So Breslow was completely hidden from the public. Again, we have to ask why, and it only came out despite Mermaids trying their best to suppress it. Why? Why did Mermaids keep his name secret? Okay, that's the question to ask people like Owen Jones, you know. And why is Owen Jones defending Mermaids with its pedophile trustee when the last 20, 30 years have been spent disassociating gay people from pedophiles? Why is he undoing all that good? Here's another thing that happened that people don't realize. Ben Cohen of Pink News had him as a staff writer. And as soon as we reported that he changed, they had staff writer until the moment he was found out. And then they changed it to guest author. Why? Why did they do that? Why was he staff writer? All this stuff is publicly available. You know, his book, he had a book out last year in which he talked about organizing a conference, which featured a 12-year-old boy performing what he called a hypersexualized dance. What more do you need? You know, like another thing, sorry, all these associations just keep coming to my mind because I've been doing this for so long and I know all of them, you know. But here's another thing. In one of the Times reports about Mermaids, these Times reports, by the way, have been completely vindicated by recent events. One person who, sorry, it wasn't Mermaids, it was Tavistock. One Tavistock whistleblower reported that she was haunted by a father who brought their child in to get transitioned. And this whistleblower felt very strongly that the father was abusing the child. And the father wanted the child to transition or to take puberty blockers so the child would forever or longer stay in this arrested state. This is what these people are defending. And it's so shocking that it's like the guy in Festen standing up and reading his statement. It's like the guy in Festen, you know, constantly being thrown out and unable to get it through to people what's happening. But of course, we've been speaking about this for 5 years, and we've been talking most of all, I think, about the fact that calling a kid trans immediately takes him out of normal safeguarding rules. You have people like Katie Montgomery telling children that if your parents are transphobic, get in touch and all this sort of stuff. This is not good safeguarding. In fact, this is a massive safeguarding failure across the board, you know. And another one thing I would add, as well as keeping up the attacks on mermaids, because you know that's what we have to do. We have to be like the guy in Festen. We have to keep doing it until people realize, you know. But oh shit, what was I going to say? I was going to say something there. What was it? Oh yeah, we gotta stop letting people away with calling kids trans kids. You know, it's like calling kids gay kids. There's no trans kids. There's no gay kids. There's just kids. You know, calling them gay kids is weird. It's a weird thing to do. Calling them trans kids is weird. It's a weird thing to do. And the only reason they use that term is to try and tug at your heartstrings. I imagine Jon Stewart did it in his apparently stupid report on gender. He's busy pooping on his legacy. So anyway, let me just remind myself of a couple more things that. Oh yeah, you know, like there's a piece that Breslow wrote. That's interesting. Yeah, you're not allowed to say it, you know, because it's an American invention and it's used. Trans kids are basically just, you know, the phrase trans kids is used to smash open the door for all these entitled AGPs, you know. So it's important to not let them use that language anymore. In fact, the word trans kids should be seen as a red flag in itself. You know, if you're trying to remove children from normal standards of safeguarding by using these kinds of phrases, then you're suspect. You know, you're suspicious. At the very least, you're unconsciously aiding people like Breslow. Breslow also wrote a very interesting piece that I really wish that I've linked to. Sorry, on the YouTube thing. It's called "They Would Have Transitioned Me: Third Conditional TERF Grammar of Trans Childhood." So this is a very good example. Breslow is someone who likes to talk about things like trans childhood because it removes these children from normal standards of safeguarding. And in this essay, he attacks Stella O'Malley and J.K. Rowling for talking about how they were tomboys and they would have been trans and so on. So you have this man who's a pedophile coming after two safeguarding or two people who are arguing for robust safeguarding. And this guy also at the LSE had a student of his talking about holding a knife to TERF's throat. So you know, sometimes the frustration of this is people don't quite see how big it is. This is a huge ideological push by pedophiles. You know, like I did that Stonewall Downfall parody where I talked about the pervert wing, and there is a pervert wing to all this. In fact, one of the things that was thrown at the lesbian marchers at Pride, I think, was we'd rather be a pervert than a TERF, you know, and that seems to be true because they're letting these guys take important positions in children's charities. You know, can you think of a worse position for a man like Breslow to be in than in charge of a children's charity that takes kids out of normal standards of safeguarding? You know, and in this they are aided by people like Women's Hour. Women's Hour did a story this morning, didn't even mention it. What they did mention was this completely fictitious bollocks about hate crimes on the rise against trans people, you know, which is already being disproven. You know, we know very well that hate crimes against trans people include saying things like Eddie Izzard is not a woman, and he's not a woman, And it's not a hate crime to say he's not a woman. But again, like Breslow's essay against Stella O'Malley and J.K. Rowling, this is all designed to simply make the opinions of women who know about safeguarding beyond the pale. You know, they say that when Savile was operational, not dead, in other words, the people he hated most were the older nurses, because the older nurses knew what he was about, and they would physically put themselves between him and the children he was trying to get to. And that's what's happening with the kind of turf dialogue that people like Breslow and his students engage in. And also, this when I say students, this is the LSE, which had Judith Butler and Sally Hines, I believe, also attached to Breslow in some way. I can't remember exactly what they were. I think they were, I don't know. But there's a connection there that's going to come out over the next few days as well. Breslow himself is like a kind of the more stuff that comes in about him, the better it is. You know, it's just constantly coming in. But I'm just worried about this Festen aspect. I'm worried that no matter what comes in, it just bounces off these people. So I just wanted to hop on and say, keep talking and keep pointing out these things. Point out they had him as a secret. That it was only the LGBT Alliance trial that brought it out, case that brought it out. You know, keep pointing that out. Keep pointing out that he had a 12-year-old child dancing for adults at an event that he put on. This strange little excerpt that I just read out to you just there, where he talks about his sexuality not being covered by homosexuality, and in fact he's considered deviant within it. These are all. What are you talking about? No. This is not true. Like, I've thought about this very carefully for a few days now, and I've read everything I can about him. I'm not saying all this off the cuff. You know, at the start, I thought, oh, maybe he's just a queer theorist who's just kind of gone down too far down the rabbit hole. But he's not. He's not. He's a pedophile. He's got a tattoo of a young boy on his arm. He put a 12-year-old boy in front of an audience and had him dance suggestively. This guy's a pedophile. So, yeah. So I guess that's kind of all I wanted to say. It's the Festen thing again. Watch the film and watch how hard it is for people to accept the truth when they're having a good time. You know, everybody is so enthralled with the fact that, you know, Stonewall and such groups have widened the umbrella of who is LGBT plus to such an extent that it's full of straight people. And unfortunately, it's also full of people like Breslow. So keep saying it. Keep pointing out to people what's been going on. Educate. Don't let them away with this. Don't let this be another Festen fact.